I just don't understand how anybody in their right mind could vote for such a person. They must be stupid. Have you ever heard this before recently? It might seem trivial on the surface, but this kind of thinking and this kind of bad faith communication is actually the real culprit that's undermining our society. On the surface, it sounds like they're baffled, as if they're really seeking to understand how another human being could think differently than them. But if we're honest, and we should be, they don't want to understand. More likely, they're just scared and angry and looking for someone to blame or to validate their feelings. But that's not the truth that's reflected in their words. And so this is the essence of bad faith communication. Saying one thing when you really mean another, often because the truth just feels too raw or petty to admit. And this isn't a rare event, it's a semantic epidemic. People say one thing while their emotions scream another. They project the illusion of being a rational, mature adult with arguments that don't match their real feelings of fear, anger, insecurity, and outrage. And in that disconnect between words and intentions, they create a distortion field where misunderstanding, frustration, and chronically unmet needs proliferate. It's mediocre. So why do we do this? And more importantly, what's the cost of living in a world where basically everyone is lying to each other all the time? Well, communication involves at least two layers, what we say and what we mean. So you take the person who exclaims they just don't understand. Well, if you take them literally on good faith and begin to explore the perspectives of the person in question, this usually just results in more frustration and arguments. Why? Because they didn't really want to understand another perspective. They wanted a mirror for their fear and anger, not clarity and insight. Most people are terrified that being honest, like really honest, would reveal something unpleasant. They'd have to own up to being petty, fearful, or even hateful. So their language projects the illusion of a compassionate, intelligent adult, but they're really just sidestepping their own shame by feigning curiosity when they're really anything but. Now, this creates a standard where nearly everyone is misdirecting themselves and others. I know they're not trying to do that, but in the end, nobody learns, nobody grows, and the real needs go unfulfilled. Just tripped. When we make a habit of hiding our true intentions, we create a culture of bad faith. A place where people are speaking all the time, but real communication is rarely taking place. So whether this is intentional or not doesn't really matter, because an environment like this is like a garden starved of sunlight. Honest communication is nourishment that allows relationships and societies to grow. And when we obscure our real truth under layers of self-deception and shame, we end up in a world that's perpetually stunted and unable to thrive. Okay, just imagine society for a minute as a beautiful garden where our deeper emotional truths are like sunlight for all the plants. Well, if we cover that garden with layers of distortion, letting only fragments of sunlight through, then it becomes toxic, twisted, deprived of the essential clarity it needs to flourish. People grow resentful, suspicious, and disconnected. And why not? Because we're nurturing mistrust and doubt in ourselves and others. And so the potential for true understanding and growth is strangled. So what does honest communication look like? Well, it's about aligning your logical words with your emotional truth. But to do this, you need both self-awareness and love. Because you must be willing to actually look deeper and acknowledge your real feelings and desires without judgment on yourself or others, no matter how petty or immature they might seem. So when you feel fear or frustration, you just acknowledge it without hiding behind blame or vague language. You just say what you actually mean. You say your real intentions. So imagine that instead of saying, "I don't understand," someone just said, "I'm terrified that this person's ideas could shape the future in a way I can't accept, and I'm pissed off at all the people that support it. Will somebody please validate this for me?" Well, wouldn't that actually feel nice to hear? That's just authenticity, and it's rare, because authenticity takes courage. When you drop the facade, you risk exposing your insecurities and all the childish, reactive parts of yourself. But that's normal. We all have it. So what? If you're afraid of the judgment of others, it's only because you're judging yourself. But in being compassionate and honest with yourself, you create the space for real connection. And then by modeling this kind of authenticity, you set a higher standard for those around you. You know, if we're going to create a world which reflects our longing for paradise on earth, and come on, don't tell me you don't want that, well, we have to start with ourselves. It's the only thing we have direct control over. Good faith communication requires that we first acknowledge the places that we're hiding, judging, and masking our deeper feelings with socially acceptable projections. Without this self-awareness, there's no hope for authentic connection. And without authentic connection, there's no hope of transcending our own collective stupidity. This isn't easy work. It requires a willingness to be seen as imperfect and to admit to feelings that might seem petty or immature. But this is the path to the world that everyone wants to live in. A world where we can have real adult conversations. So here's a challenge for you. For 1 week, interpret everything you say in here literally. Just do that. Assume nothing. Pay attention to the places where what you say doesn't match how you feel. And notice when others do the same. If something feels off, don't let it slide. Just question it, even if only in your mind, and ask yourself what you or the other person is really trying to say. Just use your intuition to look deeper into both yourself and others. And where appropriate, check it out to see if it's accurate. Okay? Just ask, is this what you mean? Language shapes consciousness, so practice elevating your language to reflect the deeper reality around you. When you embrace this level of honesty, you're not just changing your communication, you're reshaping the entire world around you. This is how we create a world where everyone can eventually flourish in their full potential, nourished by the light of truth. May the curiosity be with you.